Hi, Laura.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Hey, Nick. Great to see you as well, too.
It's always good to be back.
Yeah, it's like getting the band back together here. My two wonderful co-hosts over the past year of doing this show, and quite an exciting episode today. Also, a little bit of a sad moment, but sad in a happy way. Uh, this episode celebrating the 1 year anniversary of Morning Owls, although not perfectly consistent over the past 52 weeks. Back in April of last year, 2023, we had a wild idea. Me and Nick just chatting in the office and was able to bring it to life. So very excited to be able to celebrate that, and then we're going to mark this as a great milestone for an end of a season one of Morning Owls to take a little bit of a break, pause to get refreshed, and excited for all the great future content. So, Laura, Nick, really looking forward to having both of you on here today, being so integral to the history of the show.
I'm
Glad,
excited to be here. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah. A little bit different too than the standard format. Usually we talk about some updates taking place across the social networks, things that have changed over this past week. As always, there is never an end to the fun, exciting things that happen across the social landscape. But with this being sort of the end of the first season here, I thought it'd be fun to take a look back instead around some of the key trends that have been taking place across social media, some of the things that even I never would have imagined when we started this show have become a lot more commonplace here. How LinkedIn itself as a platform has drastically evolved over the past year, and a lot of other things to get into. So we'll spend some time chatting about that, and we'll wrap up the show just chatting about some of the amazing learnings we've had, doing something new, trying something different, and hopefully for other people thinking about this, they can learn something from this as well too. I'll kick it off. I'll say one of the things that I've been finding so interesting this past year is LinkedIn as a platform has gone from what it so different, like has changed so differently here. Reminds me a little bit of what like Facebook used to be in the golden days, like 7, 8 years ago, where like people were posting, interacting, and having these great conversations and getting engaged. And it seems like it's in a really good place from a platform perspective where people are coming to LinkedIn, they're excited to be a part of this community and this network and want to actively engage. It's gotten a little bit away from the LinkedIn stigmas of old of like, oh, it's all about posts about the challenges I've had to overcome and like trying to sell and pitch people, and now got into a really healthy place. I think the other fascinating thing for me too that I could, if I were a betting person, would not have been on my bingo card is LinkedIn influencers becoming a thing and
Yeah.
people getting paid to create LinkedIn content, which a year ago was not even like an idea at the time. So those are two things that have really surprised me over the year. Lots of other things going across networks, but maybe Nick would love to kick over to you to get a sense of what you've noticed over the year as well.
Oh, first and foremost, it's LinkedIn. Like, I'm gonna piggyback off of what you were talking about, and talking about how I think brands and like social teams as a whole have really bought into the idea that this is a spot that we can connect with professionals, especially like at Hootsuite and where I'm at. I'm over at Depaulty now. I'm focusing on LinkedIn as well, where it's like our B2B side of things, especially like you can connect with target your target buyers, your community, right, in such a clear and like talk to them in the way that they expect to be to and in the space that they expect to be talked at as well, right? Like LinkedIn, everybody understands that this is a business network. I go in and I share I'll share some family photos every now and then, just like updates of how I am as a person. But like for the most part, I go in and I want to follow the brands that I'm working, like my tech stack. I keep an eye on what's going on there. I'm keeping an eye on the brands that I want to, get inspired by. And I did want to give a shout out to the Hootsuite social team. This happened after I left. The consumer reports and like the year in review reports and everything like that. All of a sudden, it just started popping up on every single like social media marketing influencer that I followed. It was like Annie Mae Hodges, the John Steven Stancils, and all of these people, Jack Applebee's, and it just kind of kept going, and just like it took over my feed for like 2 weeks at a time, both reports. So I really appreciate it, and I took a lot of learnings from what the next evolution of the Hootsuite social team did, and how the brand really bought in. I thought that was awesome. But yeah, LinkedIn is just massive, and brands not taking themselves so seriously on it as well was big shift I think I found.
Yeah, it's so interesting too. Like, not to pigeonhole you, Nick, but for so long you were like the Twitter guy within
Yeah.
Hootsuite, where it's like that's how you built your original social following. That's a lot what we used to get the job at Hootsuite. I think like 7+
Yep.
years ago as well too. And like when we started this show a year ago, it was right in
Hold
the
on.
phase.
Literally 8 years ago to the day is when I started. Yesterday, April 18th in
Crazy.
2016 is when I started. Yeah,
Wow.
No
8 years
way.
ago.
I know.
Yeah. But yeah, it was Twitter. Twitter is where I kind of made my bread and butter. That was how I built the communities. That was my network of choice. You don't really want me taking over Instagram because I'm not great at it. TikTok, get out of here. But LinkedIn has kind of taken over as this still text-based. That's, I think, the main thing for me is you can still work with words. That's my like medium of choice, I would say, because you don't want me designing any graphics or filming anything. I'm not quite the Steven Spielberg that maybe some of the other social media marketers are when it comes to creating videos and things like that. But I think the way it was an easy transition because LinkedIn is still, you can work with words, you can still introduce some wit and create some FOMO a little bit. And the main thing is just finding your people where they are. So the community after Twitter shifted to X and started to transition and evolve a little bit in ways that maybe weren't as appealing to brands, I might say, just in like little ways, where LinkedIn became more and more appealing, and there was a little bit of a migration over here, and it's I haven't really looked back. I've loved it.
Well, what I was going to say on that point too, that I found fascinating as a trend, especially over this past year, is that I've noticed a lot of brands are now a lot more confident in saying, no, we don't want to be on that platform, or that platform doesn't make sense for me. What I was going to say is like when we did the one of the very first episodes, we were talking about X and like all the changes. I think it was either the new name was just announced or like it was recently acquired by Elon, and we're still very much in this phase of everyone asking like, what's this going to mean for our business? Are we going to continue or not here? And now as we look back a year later, like a lot of businesses have got to the point where they're like, we don't need to be on 5 different social platforms. Like 1 to 2 can be as effective, if not more, from a strategy perspective. And that was a surprise for me because I think some people had that idea going into it, but I think a lot more people are bought into that now than they were a year ago.
Totally.
100%. I think the other really interesting thing, because I totally agree with both of you, the LinkedIn and LinkedIn content creator and influencer piece was definitely like, holy smokes, this is wild seeing this sort of evolve. The one that wasn't surprising, but really interesting to see grow was everything related to AI and social. Like that just really took off this year. And like even the update earlier this week where now Instagram has AI in the search bar and on the explore page, like everyone's bringing AI into their social platforms, using it for, image or video editing, text creation. Like it's just becoming such an integral part of social. So now it's cool to see that sort of evolve as well.
Yeah. And that ties like one of our first questions of the day. I remember, Nick, we were chatting about like as a social media manager, how to to learn AI tools, how to approach that as it was emerging there. And like now it's like it's wild to think that was only a question a year ago, but it's been so cool to see like the creativity that people bring to the table with this.
Well, I'm still so I'm happy with how we as a team decided to tackle AI, and like the problem was like, what is like, should we be boycotting it or should we be embracing it? And the thing that I remember landing on early on, like as a team, was, look, AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who knows it and is a professional with it, they might. So it's time to, early on this time last year, we were talking about start practicing, get used to it, understand what a good prompt is, what works, what doesn't work. Also how to like read the AI output. Like, is this correct? Make sure you always have that secondary layer of like critical thinking. Like, am I about to share something to the brand page that is outrageously wrong? Right? Does the photo I'm sharing have 7 fingers going on it? So I'm not ashamed to say that I use ChatGPT and I use AI almost daily, still to the same kind of amount of, I use it as a feedback, like, okay, give me some different ideas. Let me like, maybe it can come up with some inspiration in the writing in the way that I wouldn't have thought of. Or if I ever need to share to my creative team, like, here's what I'm trying to get across, like with an image, like, this is what close to what I'm thinking. Could you come up and make it on brand with something similar? That's how I'm using AI these days, and I use it daily, and it has helped me be so productive. I'm a team of one over here, and it feels like I've been able to do the job of three people without the necessary like high amounts of stress and late hours because of the help of AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, such a time saver for sure. Like even just getting ideas, like you said, I use it all the time too to brainstorm, and it's so helpful to just give you that additional perspective or something, because sometimes you get so stuck in your way of thinking that it gives you some other ideas. Totally.
Yeah, and we'll give people a peek behind the curtain too, because when you do something every week for a year, it gets tough to sometimes come up with fresh ideas. And like we were so thankful when we saw LinkedIn's like inspiration AI like prompts come up as that, and like I still have mixed feelings overall about the experience, but as we were thinking about questions of the day, I will say we definitely check that out, look to that for some inspiration to help our team there. So it's like those small things that just make it a lot easier to get past the little bit of writer's block you have.
I wish I had AI. When I was starting at Hootsuite, I was running our Hoot Chat, which was our weekly Twitter chat, and I had to come up with 8 questions every week that specifically talked to a different topic. It had to be a unique topic, 8 questions for that topic. And then I had to find a partner to, like, whether it was another company or a customer or an influencer to come in, a subject matter expert to come in and align with that. And I had to do all sorts of stuff. And I was like, it sounds like it was hectic, or like maybe it was like, hey Nick, that's not that hard, but it was also on top of everything else that I was doing, know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like, okay, you've got 15 minutes on a Monday morning to try and get it out, and then you have to send the email, then you got to do all this stuff, and you have to do it week after week after week, and all the promo and all of the follow-up and reporting. And I wish I had AI back then, because it would have made my life a lot easier.
Major time saver, seriously.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's gonna be one of those things, when like your parents or grandparents go, I had to walk uphill both ways in the snow to school, 10 kilometers, 10 miles. It's gonna be the same thing, but except you kids have your AI now. I had to type this all out, just sit there and think about it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, seriously.
Well, I hope Walker can be inspired by that feature one day.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say, since we talked a lot about LinkedIn, but I wanted to give some love to Meta as well too, and some of the changes there. I think like I try and place myself back a year, and I think about Reels and that experience where they're just starting to compete with TikTok, and I think that's been very fun to see how that much has changed overall. It feels interesting though, because at least from a personal perspective, it feels like Instagram's moving away from being like a platform for brands and more of a platform for people to connect from a community standpoint. And brands are still doing amazing things on Instagram, but at least from a personal day-to-day use, I find like that's where I go more to see my friends and see what's going on in their world. But curious to get a sense of maybe, Laura, since I know you're very involved with a lot of customers there, how you've noticed that change over the past year.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I feel like it's so dependent on the company. Like some of them still are using it in very similar ways, where it's like, oh yeah, we're just posting employee photos and, it's a good spot for employees to connect. But I think, it's been cool to see them grow as well, and, leveraging Reels and collab posts, I believe, coming out this year. And so they've done some good things. And I'm excited to see where they go with this AI in search and how that all gets integrated. Like, I don't know. I think they're definitely thinking. But one of the really interesting things that I heard on another podcast this week, they were talking about sort of Instagram, and when it started, it was such a place to connect with family and friends, and there was no stress, and like everyone could just post photos of, whatever they wanted, a dog, their food, like the view. And it was so relaxed and chill. And so what they were saying is now it almost feels so curated and like you have to
Yeah.
show up and put so much time and effort into it. So it's interesting because I feel like a lot of creators, although they do put a lot of time and effort into their content, are also thinking about, okay, well, how do we bring the fun back into Instagram again? And like, how do we bring the lightheartedness back? So I'm interested to see like if that shift starts coming into the future as well, and more of that like laid back, let's have fun, let's just post things that,
Mhm.
you know, we're not having to be hyper curated for. Start happening as well, or if we sort of stick in that zone.
Yeah. Well, I find too that since if we're going to talk about how Instagram has evolved in the last year, I find that I I always used to just do static images, maybe a video, but like feed posts. I don't
Mhm.
really post photos or like feed posts as much nearly anymore because I like the ephemeral way of stories. I share
Yeah.
stories, and I do love that they're like, from the storytelling standpoint, I love that you can pair a photo or a video with a piece of music. So I love
Mhm.
adding music to all my stories. So if anybody follows me on Instagram, I share photos of whether it's golfing or whatever's happening in the day. I'll share it to my stories rather than into a feed post, and I'll try to find a fun, like, perfect movie score or song to go with it, and that's something that I think has just been relatively new for me. But you know, from a business standpoint, I haven't been using much of Instagram at all. I could tell you I use just LinkedIn. LinkedIn's our focus, but
Mhm.
It'll be interesting to like where it goes in the next year to 3 year from a social standpoint. Like, oh,
sorry, Laura, you reminded me as well that you're talking about AI in search. One of the biggest evolutions or shifts I've seen is social search.
Yeah.
That's
oh, that's
Yeah,
been huge. Yeah.
that was I think the last year. Like obviously it's been probably hammered and talked about, all day, and I know Hootsuite has probably 7 different blogs about it because it is such an interesting topic. But going when I need to go to something, I'll Google it, but I'll also go to TikTok, which is some of the only times I actually go to TikTok. I'm not very active on it, but I love to go and search for gardening tips, or if I'm traveling to Tofino, is there anything new, like what to do in Tofino, hikes there, or like any trips, and there's always an answer. I helped my brother recently with a Ninja Creamy and how to make protein ice cream. You go to TikTok and there's answers for everything there, and there's like a well thought out curated video for the most part on any question I've asked so far, which I thought was really really interesting and really cool.
Yeah.
That's new. Yeah.
Totally. And I love how you can like watch that process similar to YouTube, but in more of a like short, snackable sort of video there where it's like, okay, instead of just reading step by step on Google how to do it, I can see someone do
Exactly.
it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think a great point. And that was something too we were talking about way back in the first episode around social search and all the fun things
Yeah.
that go along with it. But I think a great point to wrap up on, like, I'm excited from like a future of social networks in terms of what'll be happening here. I think ideas like the Fediverse, where it's like everything coming together in one, maybe things like we'll be chatting in a metaverse experience one day instead of live here. Like, who knows what'll happen at this point, but it's like it
Yeah.
truly will be so different a year from now. To wrap up the show too, I wanted to take some time to chat since we've put some amazing work into this, done some really cool things that, like, coming into it I would have never even imagined, and wanted to share some of the learnings of this experience as well too, because I think it's important whenever you do a project or do anything to take some time to reflect and say, like, uh, how was that experience? Are there things we can take forward, or are there things other people can learn to jumpstart their journey and not have to go through the same headaches and pains that we've gone through here? I think I tell people this all the time. One of the biggest learnings that I've gotten from doing this is the idea of content serialization, and the idea that every Thursday morning, whether you wanted it to or not, that Thursday came, and if you're committed to doing it, you would figure it out and figure out a way to make it happen. And I didn't quite appreciate like how powerful that can be from a social strategy perspective, where in the latter half of the year, people would know when to tune in. People would be like, oh yeah, I'm listening to it on my car ride in the way and on the way in the morning. Like, you create these habits and people look to tune in to know what to expect from them. So when I talk to customers now and they're thinking about their social strategy and how to take that to the next level, I always say, like, have a strategy where you hold yourself accountable to 2 to 3 posts of a certain type. If you're just looking to get started there, like, that's really the first step, because once you can do that, then you can start to get creative to start to build off of that and take it to a whole new level. So that's been an amazing learning for me, among many others. But curious, Laura, I know you've been along for the ride a little bit longer than Nick here. Any key learnings you've gotten over the past year?
Yeah, I definitely would agree with the accountability and just like having that set sort of plan. The other really interesting thing I would say is just the aspect of going live. Like, I'll chat with customers sometimes and I'll be like, why don't you throw some live video into the mix? And everyone gets so nervous about it and uncomfortable about it. And I think, it's interesting because now, having done it, it's really not as intimidating as you think. It's the first maybe couple episodes where it's something new and you're, trying it out for the first time, or maybe you've got a little bit of those nerves. But I think with anything where you're putting yourself out there on social, the more you do it, the better you get. And the more comfortable you feel doing that. So I think as long as you have a structure behind it, like for us, we'd have that format of like, okay, here are the things that we're going to talk about today. It makes showing up on social that much easier.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Another thing that I was thinking on is I coach social selling. And I talk to people, whether it was at Hootsuite or outside of Hootsuite at Tipalti now. A lot of people were really nervous about, I don't want to say something wrong. Why does anybody care what I have to say, right? Those are two kind of issues. Like, what if I say something that's like against the brand or it's going to hurt the brand or anything like that? They're like, you know what? I'm just going to not post anything and not try, and therefore I'm going to be safe. Where realistically, like, I think that's a little bit of an old school way of thinking, where and the point I'm getting to is everybody has something that they have something to say about, right? There is that topic that, what is the topic you can stop and talk for 5 minutes without stopping, or 20 minutes without stopping? What is that topic, and what is that you're excited about that you can go and create content about, right? Like, and then like, everybody's got that. So take that and keep that in mind, and you can talk about that on social media. I used to be able to talk about craft beer all day long. Now I talk about social media, right? And then the other thing is, who cares? Well, it might not be your current audience, but there is an audience out there. You can look up, I go to TikTok and look for craft beer and social media. You're going to find something. I mean, that is automatically, find anything on craft beer, it's already on social media. So, there's somebody there who understands that combination of topics. But you can start, like, once you start is how you start to find your community. And if you build it, they will come, right? There's that saying. You can bring that in and you start to build your own community and build your own network where people do start to appreciate the content you're sharing. Long story short, get started, find something that you want to talk about, and turn it into a series like this. And, you start to build your network and build yourself up as well as an expert within that topic.
Yeah, I think there's two things. One directly I'd want to add to that too, which is around that network and the community. Like, when we were thinking about this show and chatting about Nick originally too, is like, how do we find something that social media managers would get excited about, that would see value from? And like, having that audience in mind was a great starting point. But then really taking that a step further, where we were bringing in amazing guests, amazing people in the space and the community. And luckily, social media managers are going to be on social media. Like, we picked a good audience for that, but there'll be people interested in everything and anything under the sun. And that was a really great learning around, like, to help drive growth from this, being able to use not necessarily use, but leverage other people's amazing networks and the people who would be interested but may not know, and help to build those relationships here. Like, I can say I've made great friends of people we've had on guests on this show over this past year, who I'll be chatting to for the rest of my life, and doing Zoom coffee chats with, who I would not have known previously. And it really just comes from being willing to be an active participant in a community that you may not have been engaged with before. So I think that's been go for it.
Oh, I was gonna say too, like as somebody who's actively trying to sell into this community, right? Like, or sell to people, like sell to marketers and sell to social media marketers. You hosting this event, because I don't know if anybody knows this, Ezra's on the sales side at Hootsuite, but you sitting every week and having these conversations puts you in the seat of social media managers. It helps you understand where they are, like, and where they're coming from. So it helps you become, it helped you, if you ask me, become that much of an expert, that much more of an expert. It helps you become better at your job because you thought about it a lot more. There's some people who don't, they log off at the end of the day and that's it, and they check out until 9 a.m. the next morning, right? But with this, you're being active and proactive even, right?
Yeah.
And taking the time to create and understand and learn about the industry that you're part of. So I thought that was really awesome too.
Oh, absolutely. Like, bless LinkedIn's soul, but I never realized like how bad the reporting in LinkedIn is, and they just take away data from you after a certain time. And I'm like, now I get it. Like, I feel those frustrations and those pains that I talk to people who have those day in, day out. I was going to say the other key learning too, and I think a great one to wrap up on for other people thinking about these types of things is, and it's more a personal idea that I've come to realize, but the idea that if it feels right, don't overthink it sometimes. Just buckle up and go for it. And in the marketing world too, and we're in this really weird place overall where there is such an emphasis on data from a strategy perspective and trying to optimize things from a data standpoint, and huge value in that as well too. I'd caveat by saying, like, you got to make sure you're thinking about the right metrics when you're really leaning into data, because that can take you down various different paths. But there's also a world of marketing where you almost don't overthink it. You just say, like doing the show never felt like it was a burden, because it was like, this just makes sense for what we should be doing here. Like, it makes sense that we want to get out here, talk about social media, talk to people in the community, talk about these updates. And like that's what got me so excited about it from the start, and what's been so exciting about it throughout this year. I think beyond just this, when you think about other aspects of marketing or even in day-to-day life, leaning into those moments where you may not have all of the numbers and all the details and all the strategy behind it, but taking that leap of faith where it's like, it just makes sense. It seems right. We'll figure it out as we go. We'll build the plan.
And what's the worst that happens if it doesn't work out? We just
Yeah.
don't do a second one,
Yeah.
Totally.
Whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that's been a fun experience too, to be able to just have a quick idea. I think we turned it around within a month of like, okay, let's just make this happen, and then let's keep building it as we go. Maybe Nick, any other thoughts, Laura, as well too, around things we've learned over the past year?
I don't think I want to add too much more, because we've really covered the most of it. Another thing to think of, if when you are wanting to create a piece of content, or if you think you need a little bit of help, reach out to somebody that you trust, right? Ezra, you reached out to me and said, Nick, I've got this idea. I think it's going to work. Here's some of the reasons why we want to do it. Do you want to give it a go? And for me, it was like, I trust you. Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? Let's try it, And that was a quick learning for me. And even having this conversation is making me think about some things I could be doing better at my company now. So I'll be taking away a couple things. I got to just reach out to a couple people and be like, hey, we're doing a LinkedIn Live. Let's go do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's the goal. It's like, I want to inspire people. I want people to get excited to do fun things, because, like, especially on social media, that's what I love to see, is people trying out new ideas, doing different things, whether it works or not, and seeing everyone be excited to show up at the end of the day here.
Mm-hmm.
I think a good place to wrap up on here as we start to think about ending season 1. I will say, although I led a lot of this, is absolutely a team effort for a lot of these kinds of things and how they come together here. I want to thank Gianfranco, especially too, all the amazing graphics that we have. I just started doing this out of the blue, and I got a ping over Slack with like, hey, here's some good graphics you can start using. And like that, I was so appreciative of as well too, to get that visibility, but that support here. Nick, I know you too, initially with this crazy idea and hopping in those first few weeks as the co-host, and then Laura so graciously stepping in as well too, to fill Nick's big shoes and be an amazing co-host over this past year. But then also all the amazing guests and people who've tuned in to listen to this show as well. Like, I would happily talk to to two people or no one if no one was listening, but I think it's also fun to be able to hear the feedback and hear people enjoying it and wanting to see this succeed as well too. We've had amazing people, experts in their space, who've been willing to give up some of their time of the day to hop on these conversations, and like that's been special as well too. So did want to really emphasize just like how appreciative I am that not just me doing this, but a whole group of amazing people who all rally behind this.
It's been so fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
now
thank you for all you do, Ezra. Yes.
I will say too, for those who are still listening to this point, it's definitely not an end to the show, but just a pause to this first season here. I think it's a good also reminder that there's no rules when you're making your own content. You can you can do whatever makes sense or whatever feels right in these moments. I think it's a good chance for us to rest, relax, recover, enjoy the summer a little bit, and not stress out about every Thursday morning coming up here, Laura. And when we do come and bring this back live, I'm sure there'll be lots of fun, new, exciting things we bring to the table as well.
Totally. Looking forward to season 2.
Yeah,
that's right.
Killer. All right. Well, hope everyone has a lovely rest of their day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.